Like if you really understand Bitcoin, then everything's going to be fine. The whole attitude or thought of like, you never have enough Bitcoin, keep stacking, you need as much Bitcoin as you can. Like at some point that's like a little unhealthy, and it's a little just, it's kind of a symptom of more of a fiat or scarcity mindset. How can we further optimize? How can we build more and more value into the network without compromising the network? And so of course the purists are like, well, no, we want to keep it as small as possible, as focused, as pure, and just this like really basic functionality. And then of course on the other side, it's, well, look, we need to evolve, and Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's still run by consensus. The block, we've got all that figured out. Now we want to know how we can create even more value here. But I think post-money world is possible, and maybe it takes 100 years, maybe 500 years.
Yeah, it's kind of like, why are you watching Bitcoin news every single day when you really understood it?
Yeah, like you don't need to worry. You can sleep well at night. That's part of the gift of Bitcoin, is you can relax and focus on self-improvement. All of a sudden, like if you really understand Bitcoin, then everything's going to be fine. And we're headed towards a utopia. Bitcoin's going to succeed. It's going to win. And, so it's, and you can spend time working on yourself and spending time with family and going out on a hike and creating value in the world somehow. This is how a lot of us create value in the world, is trying to propagate the messages of Bitcoin. But, there's a healthy and an unhealthy way to do it, and an aspect to it worth talking about.
There is also this thing where, and maybe we can just keep it rolling and get started directly with that, because I think there's a really interesting point when we get into Bitcoin content, and you understood Bitcoin, and there's always that argument of like, you can always dive deeper, and it's true for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has a lot of adjacent rabbit holes. But once you really get the Bitcoin message, maybe it's after 50 hours of learning, maybe it's 200 hours of learning. It depends also what is also already your basis. Did you already get sound money? Did you already knew that fiat was broken? And then you just Bitcoin is a nice solution for that. It's a lot quicker. If you have to unlearn all the fiat crap, and get into that way. And then it's probably the best way of getting in there. And then at some point you decide, I want to go deeper. Like I did. And I have a podcast that every single day I go deeper and deeper and deeper. Or you just step out and use Bitcoin as your savings technology. And I think even with podcasters, we've seen with Peter McCormick, who kind of said I want to step out a little bit. He's still in the Bitcoin community. Mm-hmm. He's still a Bitcoin podcaster, even though it's no longer what Bitcoin did. But he focuses on other topics now also. I think Preston Pitch, also does a little bit of a similar thing now. And so we've seen it across the board where at some point, you just get that Bitcoin is the best savings technology, best money, and then you're like, yeah, what now?
Yeah, there's actually not a lot that we need to do. The thing is, Bitcoin is going to do its thing. And, at some point, there's these real world considerations. For most people in Bitcoin, I think that all of us are plagued, and look, I'm the exact same as everybody else. We're plagued still with this fiat mentality, this scarcity mentality that we've grown up with. And, the whole attitude or thought of you never have enough Bitcoin, keep stacking, you need as much Bitcoin as you can. At some point that's a little unhealthy, and it's a little just, it's kind of a symptom of, of more of a fiat or scarcity mindset. And believe me, I totally get it. And I keep stacking, and everybody wants more Bitcoin. But when you think about it, Bitcoin is doing its thing. It's performing the way, I've been here for 10 years buying, and it's been doing exactly what it was supposed to do. And it's an evolving organism. And when it boils down to our lives, you know, for right now. I mean, AI notwithstanding, but like we only have so much time. And I think that, you know, I think I'm 50 years old now, and I think back to when I was a kid and there were no cell phones, there were no computers or anything, or maybe there was like, you couldn't do anything with a computer. I was outside chasing squirrels with my brothers, trying to catch squirrels like all the time. And like finding, like searching the neighborhood and going on bike rides and going on camping trips and climbing buildings. You know, like there wasn't anything to do except for to run around and play. And I think that, you know, we get really caught up in our phones and our social medias, and we want Bitcoin to succeed so bad for whatever personal reasons. Some of it is we want to become wealthy and we want to become financially free so we don't have to work. But then some of it is we, you know, obviously we want the world to become a better place, and we have hope and we have a solution. And so we're like pounding the table, telling everybody, guys, we've got a solution. There's an answer here, like to all this corruption and all this horrible, you know, like we should have total abundance. You know, I said on a recent podcast with Stacy, we have a solution. We've got utopia. Like if you don't believe in utopia or you don't want utopia, like get the fuck out of the way, you know, let us build utopia. So, you know, I think there's a lot in there. There's a lot to unpack, but what I've been trying to do, and I'm not perfect by any means. I'm constantly working on myself. It's part of the reason why I wrote this book was it was a self-help exercise. But you know, what I've been trying to do is touch grass, spend more time hiking in the mountains with my dog, letting Bitcoin do its thing, which means I don't have to do anything except for, you know, buy and hodl. So
there is, I searched this meme. It is an amazing meme that I really want to show, and I will keep searching it on the side. But it basically shows. Maybe I can just explain the picture of it. There is this meme that someone made for Fiat, basically where you like trying to collect dollars, and then at the end you stay there with all your dollars, and there's the cliff hanging. Someone made that same meme with Bitcoin, because it feels like the same thing where we're doing with like, we stack as many Bitcoin as we can. We sacrifice everything, like no chairs, like no life convenience. And all we want is just as many Bitcoin as we want. And then like, oh, so your life's mission is to die with as many Bitcoin as you want. Like, you really want to die as rich as possible? Like, yeah. I don't get that really.
It's really selfless to do that for all your future generation. I get, like, to sacrifice your whole life. It's total Mother Teresa style. You know, I mean, when you think about it, it's like if you ask somebody, okay, gun to your head, you've got 1 week to live. What do you want to do with your life? How do you want to spend your final days? You know, or like, what's the most enjoyable thing you do in your life? I think most people would say, oh, it's skiing, it's hiking, it's camping, it's going race car driving with my son, it's scuba diving. For me, it's rock climbing, you know, like all these different passions. For some people might genuinely be like, oh, it's coding Bitcoin, it's doing Bitcoin, everything Bitcoin. And that's fine. Do your passion. But if your answer isn't like, doing Bitcoin, stacking Bitcoin, hodling Bitcoin, living in Bitcoin, like you're pushing off the things you love most about life for a future that's never coming. And it's just the same as a fiat mentality where you're dangling a carrot. You can stack, and you can, you know, you don't need to really be that involved to stack. It's really easy. You just set up an auto, you know, a daily stack or a weekly stack or whatever, or, you know, but go and live your passion, you know. And I think a lot of the motivation is people feel stuck, very frantic, very stuck. Dollars are going less far as they're designed to do to keep us in the rat race. And, you know, people just want to be free. People are sick of working 9 to 5, sick of paying more and more for everything every year. And that's the purpose of Bitcoin. But, you know, you have to realize Bitcoin's going to do its thing. If you're younger and you want to work really hard and sacrifice some of the, you know, enjoyment out of life by just working to stack, I get it, but have a goal, make balance in your life, because otherwise you'll have, you know, 5 Bitcoin and then you'll be unhappy and you'll be fat and out of shape, and you won't have, like, you know, rock climbed enough or motorcycled enough or whatever it is you love to do.
I have a interesting message for all the people that are really hustling hard. I don't know if I would call myself a hustler, but I do have a daily Bitcoin podcast, and I add now on top of that 3 to 4 times a week live stream. So I do a lot of content, and then I also have a small company where I have a like a substantial equity stake in there that I co-founded with Microseed. Then I have my partner. So there's a lot of like things that are going on the business side of the podcast, of just speaking, resulted in a lot of different things. And I had last year at the end, kind of an incident where I just tell the story. Like on a Sunday evening, on the Sunday morning, I got kind of stressed. Like, I don't know why I got stressed, but I just kind of got stressed. And then, it was kind of a relaxing day, but I just was stressed for some reason, and it felt off. And then at lunch, I was at a restaurant with my girlfriend, and I couldn't be in the moment. I couldn't relax really. Then afterwards, she took care of me, just like calmed me down. Of like, I just like laid in the bed and didn't do anything, even though in my mind I was like, oh shit, I have to do some work. And then on Monday morning, everything was good again after sleeping. And then I was like, oh, I have to catch up with all the work now. I just worked. And then around like 11 a.m., like noon time, I got so bad. Like I got so like anxious that I was like, oh, I have to go to the doctor. Like I was alone at home, and I was like, oh, that's too dangerous. Like I felt like a little bit dizzy, and turns out I had like 180 blood pressure, like something ridiculous high. And I didn't throw up anything like that. So it was maybe a minor panic attack. It was like, just like a lot of stress coming towards me. And it was in this very moment where I was like, I'm living the dream. Like I do exactly what 1-2 years before I was like really wanting to do, but because I liked it so much, I did a lot of it, and I didn't have the kind of the boundary, and I had the false belief that if you really like something, you cannot do too much of it. You can still stress yourself out. And it wasn't that moment where I said like, I have to hire an editor. I have to hire someone that does thumbnails. I have to hire like post-production, like basically all the things that I personally don't like to do that much. I just hire. And this is what I did. Like, I think 2 months later, I hired Pablo, who edits all the videos. Still to this day, he also will edit this one. Then a month later, Pam, and then I think 2 months later, Eric, and they are kind of the team now behind the podcast. And I'm glad that I just have to do the talking. And I tell that story because since then, the podcast and everything else have been running way better. Because I get time to think, I can get time to strategize, I get time with my girlfriend, I get time with my family. And so, this is just a rant from me. So sorry for that. It's like,
no, this is amazing.
Give yourself time, give yourself the time to do something, balance something, because it might actually give you more, like spending time with your girlfriend, with your wife, with your kids, with like whoever is in your family, might actually be a better return on actually your business than actually spending more time in your business, because you have better ideas, you're more relaxed and showing up with like a great sleep and all of that. So that's just like my personal story with the podcast. And I think, for everyone that's just like stacks as hard as possible, has like 5 jobs and has like 100 hours a week, jobs, it might actually be better for your Bitcoin stack to slow down for some weird reason.
I agree 100%. And, thanks for sharing that. It's hard to share when you've been vulnerable, and that shows a lot of strength. So kudos, Robin. I had a very similar situation. And I've never been a very anxious type of person, but I had a full on panic attack. And it was horrible. And I felt the same way, even as a physician, and I could intellectualize it and say, okay, I feel like my heart's beating so fast, and I feel like I have chest pain, and I'm in really good shape, from years and years of climbing and Ninja Warrior and all these things. And I was like, okay, I know I'm okay intellectually, but man, I feel so rotten, and it was such a difficult thing. And it was the same thing. I just realized I needed to slow down. And, you know, this is a marathon. And what really is the point of life if you're not really enjoying and having happiness along the way? You know, like, okay, so is a chair really going to make a meaningful difference in, you know, in a Bitcoin amount? I mean, maybe in 2010, it would have been a good idea to sell a chair for like 100 Bitcoin or something. But, you know, like it makes less and less of a difference. But I think that part of living a Bitcoin lifestyle and adopting Bitcoin is adopting a low time preference and adopting the freedom from the chains and the yoke of fiat slavery. And that sort of freedom comes with a lot of personal responsibility. How are you going to use that freedom? Well, if you use that, you know, if you put yourself in the same yoke and a different kind of yoke and a different kind of slavery, like a slavery to the religion of Bitcoin, let's say, or to accumulating as much Bitcoin as possible, well, then maybe you're just not being present. You're just living in the future. And that creates so much stress and anxiety. And, you know, it's good to have goals and, oh, I want to get to 0.1 Bitcoin, or I want to get to 0.5 Bitcoin, or 1 Bitcoin, or 5 Bitcoin, whatever it is. You know, it's good to have those goals. But I think to actively wake up, maybe meditate a little bit, have a coffee, look in the mirror, do an affirmation. Some of these cheesy things really work, and say, I am free. I am living in abundance. I am so lucky. I can go out to eat. You know, what am I going to do to make my life even better? I think I'm going to take 4 or 5 hours off today and go into the mountains and go on a hike. Like hiking in nature and just doing something for yourself is medicine. It's so good for you. And at the end of the day, you know, you're going to live longer, you're going to live happier, you're going to live healthier. And like you said, if you slow down, it's probably going to be better for your Bitcoin stack to be like, I need to slow down, hire other people. Like even those short-term financial hits of hiring someone, it's always just a better idea to be in a more peaceful, relaxed state. That's when our best work happens.
Yeah, it allows you to reflect and do the things that you really want to do. Is that what kind of self-Bitcoinization is all about?
Yeah, thanks. That's a softball, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Robin. Well, yeah. So I mean, self-Bitcoinization for me was a journey. You know, everybody talks about hyper-Bitcoinization and society and thinks about how this is going to change the world and how everything's going to improve. And all those things I think are true. And it's wonderful to have hope. And then we think about the technical marvel of Bitcoin, and we think about, you know, you go down all these rabbit holes, like we started talking about. You go deep into rabbit holes, and intellectually, it's very satisfying to understand the world around you and these complex structures that humans make. But I don't think there's enough talk or enough real thoughts about maybe the most important side of Bitcoin, which is the internal, not the external. But with hyper-Bitcoinization, more people have a chance to become self-Bitcoinized, which is really just saying self-actualized. It's more of a modern kind of energy-centric nod to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where he said, look, you need to have a roof over your head and you need to have some food on your table before you can think about love. And then you need to have love and you need to have friendships and relationships to be really stable before you can think about enlightenment and self-love and self-actualization. And he did a lot of research about this, and it's all psychology. It's, you know, it's kind of softer observational research, but he found that about 1% of society is really self-actualized. And I think that whether you call it self-actualization or becoming an Übermensch, as Nietzsche talked about, that I talk about in the book, or you talk about, you know, Buddhism and enlightenment, you know, I think that the internal benefits of adopting a low time preference, of having your time become more valuable as you move forward through life, which is what Bitcoin does and what technology does. Bitcoin is just technology synergistic, right? It's symbiotic with technology. It is technology itself. It's the money of technology. It's the money of abundance. And I think that focusing inward for me has been such a valuable, healthy path and journey. And so being a healer and being a doctor for the last 20 years, I see people falling apart every day. And more than 50% of it is psychological. People come in. You and I had panic attacks, and probably a lot of people listening, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just a symptom of this crazy life in the hamster wheel, shackled, to money and to production, and our net worth is valued in money, which is insane. So I wrote Self-Bitcoinization partially for selfish reasons, to get my thoughts down and to live the way, to live the philosophies that Bitcoin promotes and brings into reality. One thing I wanted to show is I had this page bookmarked, but like if there's nothing else, like there's this self-help section where there's a SATS journal, like a self-actualization through Satoshi, and I'll
I love that.
And so this is a daily journal that you can just make photocopies of. Everybody should have that for free, obviously. I mean, I'm going to just post it on my socials, or you can post it. And I use that daily. And some days I skip it, but I write down, kind of what I did that day. And, there's all sorts of customizable ways to use Bitcoin as a self-help mechanism to just enjoy life and let Bitcoin do its thing, while you focus on your passions and your love of life. And so, balance is really important. And this has been this whole project for me has been like a project of love. Like I need to make a cheaper version because it's like $100 on Amazon. It was really expensive to print, and it's like all full of color photos and the highest quality paper and gold leaf. I mean, so like I need to get like a cheaper version out there so that more people can enjoy or get something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super interesting. And journaling, just to circle back quickly on that one, is something every time I did it, it greatly benefited me, but it never sticks. Like I do it, it's almost something as an emergency thing. If I feel like there's something off, even if it's the slightest, smallest thing, I start journaling. And then if I feel really good again, like I kind of slack off. With journaling, and then I do it again if like something happening. You know what I mean?
I think that's a totally great way to go about it, because journaling is a form of medicine. It's a form of grounding, self-reflection, taking inventory of where you are. And I think it's totally appropriate. If you're having fun, if you're running around like, this is awesome, I'm having a great time, don't waste your time journaling. Like, it's not like something you have to do every day. They say everything in moderation, including moderation. It's good to kind of, if you're enjoying your life and you're very happy, then keep doing what you're doing. I think the thing is that most of us get caught. This world, unfortunately, is set up to create stress and to create competition and to create a desire to work and make more money and become wealthy and hoard resources. And I think that's where we get into trouble. And I always love on X or on Instagram when people are sharing their lives. When you think about like the happiest people, they're people like who have no money, who are snowboarding or rock climbing or living in their van, traveling the world. And the more you want more money, the more you get kind of trapped and boxed in. And I went to the Bitcoin conference, and it was, I felt kind of like out of place a little bit. Like I didn't love it. I loved the close relationships, and I love talking with people who I've met online and who are great thinkers and just very interesting people. And so the very good part about the conference was one-on-one, at the bar or over dinner. Actually, my best experiences at any Bitcoin conference have been over dinner with somebody, and talking and just forming a relationship and just enjoying each other's company. But the actual conference and like going to conferences, like, yeah, I learned something here and there, but walking around, there's a little bit of a desperation feel. And so, I think becoming self-actualized and trying to become enlightened, and it's always a practice. It's always something we're pushing towards, staying healthy in mind and body. These things will grant you more serenity and happiness and fulfillment throughout life than any Bitcoin stack will. You could have a huge Bitcoin stack and be very unhappy.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't come from the Bitcoin. The happiness, it comes from what you do with it, I guess.
Yeah, it comes from within. Bitcoin is just a freeing mechanism. It's just a key to opening up your heart and your mind and allowing yourself time to live and enjoy your life. So, that I think that it becomes more and more important as society starts to crumble, because we're seeing crazy things happening right now. I mean, just to take a slight segue, I think that you listen to the political rhetoric. Things are clearly escalating. I mean, the Charlie Kirk assassination and the televised murders, these things are not good for society. They're not good for us as individuals. And I think we're at a real Schelling point where, and I say that for Bitcoin, because I think Bitcoin's importance is growing every day. I think it was initially financially really important, and it's become now like something that I think is going to be more critical for every aspect of daily life, and even for safety. I mean, things are like, it's the whole fourth turning thing, and I feel like we're just moving towards a really scary dystopian future. And it's more important than ever to relax and kind of keep a little bit of a distance and keep healthy.
100%. I just wanted to add that from the conferences, I think the best thing on the conferences that you can possibly do is one-on-ones with people. Yeah. Like that, like the talks are online. The information about the companies are online. Like you don't get again knowledge thing. So the two best things I always get from conferences, why I think I'm kind of addicted to it at that point, is meeting with people you otherwise wouldn't meet. So with people that actually like the podcast. So with the guests I already meet. So I actually kind of try to avoid the speaker area, because with them I anyway speak like every single day with on the podcast. I just walk around on the conference, because there are the people that say like, "Oh, Robin, I watch your show," and I'm like, this is the guy I want to talk with, because this is weirdly enough he's so excited about my work, and we have a weird connection that I don't even know of. And those are the best conversations. It sounds, I don't know how it sounds, but it is really an amazing feeling to get in touch with the people that watch you weekly, and you don't even know them. Like you have no clue about them. And that's the single reason why I go to conferences. If that wouldn't be the case, I would not even go to conferences.
No, that's so funny that you mentioned that, and it's very true. I mean, people are obviously really resonating with your work. I mean, I know I do. That's part of the reason, I come back on your podcast and talk. I mean, you're an intellectual, and the Bitcoiners who really expand our minds. I mean, not even just Bitcoiners. I mean, there's plenty of people who are not even into Bitcoin that help expand our mind, even from the past. I mean, there's lessons to be learned from each other that can improve our lives and really give us like aha moments. And I think that when you meet someone who you resonate with, they're resonating with you, and they're so excited by your work because they generally are thinking about, there's a lot of metacognition, and they're thinking about what you're saying, and they're they're coming up with their own thoughts. It's like it's a very interactive thing listening to a podcast where someone is, bringing together a lot of different minds who have slightly different perspectives on this beautiful thing we call reality. And so, you can learn when someone resonates with you. It's not like a one-way street. I think you're identifying that you can really learn a lot from them. And it's interesting. That's been true for me as a physician, as an emergency room doctor for the last 20 years. There are so many patients I learn from. I learn how they deal with, catastrophic injuries. I've got so many stories from the emergency department. It's insane, that have shaped me, who I am as a person. And that's a gift from my patients. And so even the patients who, even if there's been friction or problems, there's a lot of opportunity to learn out there if you're open to it.
I think you're the first ever person to call me an intellectual. So thank you for that.
Well, you are. Congratulations.
I earned that label. I have an interesting one. The Bitcoin community, like, I think now with October here and like so much hype around like the price again, there's a lot of like price swings. And then we hear the news like, oh, this huge sovereign wealth fund is buying, this corporation is interested in it. Then we have the internal wars with like core versus mods. We have the treasury companies. We have, I think, Luxembourg, I think yesterday announced like the sovereign wealth fund is buying. That there's so much, it feels so hectic in the moment. How would you kind of like describe the Bitcoin community at the moment, especially from the perspective of we have Bitcoin, like it already is great, and then there's so much, it feels so hectic, and there's so much going on currently.
Right, exactly. And I feel that too. I think we all feel it. The knots versus core thing. I think it's all like distraction. I feel like all of us humans, all of us Bitcoiners are like ants running around like the wheel of a car or something, and like we're all, so interested in what this big, amazing thing is that we are trying to understand. I mean, everybody's doing work on it and like understanding the ramifications of a complete humanity-wide change and a demonetization of centralized power structures. And I think that we are hyper-focused on, all these community things and like, especially core versus knots is a big thing right now, but October, Bitcoin price, when really, I don't think Bitcoin cares. And I think Bitcoin as an organism has to go through all of this as an evolution, and it's going to get to a place based on consensus and based on a decentralized, understanding of what we need. And look, if some people say, well, you have to be very proactive because otherwise there's a risk to it and it's not going to work. And I'm not sure I believe that. I think that Bitcoin is going to do Bitcoin, and it's going to work off of incentives, just like every other human system. And I think that incentives for everybody who owns Bitcoin, which is more and more people every day, and sovereign wealth funds and politicians and BlackRock, the incentives are for Bitcoin to appreciate in value. And that's what we all care about, like fundamentally, because it gives us economic freedom to do whatever we want. And so I don't think anybody is going to, really try and screw that up. And I don't think any one person really can screw that up. And I think if Bitcoin ultimately fails, which, look, I've been wrong so many times in my life. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm 99.999% convicted on Bitcoin, but I still have real estate. I own gold, silver, but obviously Bitcoin mostly. But what I would say is like, let Bitcoin do its thing. I think everything else is a distraction. Like if you really, really understood Bitcoin and wanted Bitcoin to improve your life, like right now, you, in your heart of hearts, I think we're all like, oh, I want to see 200,000 or 300,000 or some random fiat number, $444,000. Hat tip to Josh out there. I think that it's like, I would love to see Bitcoin at like $20,000 if I'm being honest, because then I could accumulate more Bitcoin, which again is like is the trap that we were talking about earlier that I suffer from as well. But the fact is, I want to do as little as possible to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. And that means Bitcoin, like, being cheaper for me. It keeps getting more expensive. Like I remember back when I could buy multiple Bitcoin at the same time. And now that's like, I can't do that. And so I think that all these things are a distraction, and it's more important than ever as society fractures and as, people become more and more compartmentalized in their way of thinking. I think that's like what Bitcoin is so anti-fragile, about. That's like, it's one of its main characteristics is it just doesn't care. Like, it's going to evolve. It's going to do what it does. And I think that problems will be fixed. Problems will be addressed. I understand the debate. For example, Knots versus Core. And I have like some personal opinions, but I also am totally agnostic because I don't really know. But one thing I do know is that no matter what form of Bitcoin we ultimately end up having, incentives are going to make that Bitcoin hopefully as useful as possible. And hopefully it will be that cure that the world needs for the disease of corruption and the fiat problems that we're facing. So I think it's all a distraction. All of the debates, all the problems, society falling apart. Like, if you turned off your TV or turned off X or turned off whatever you're glued to and went out on a hike into the mountains, or went for a run, or went on like a trip, like a road trip for a week and totally tuned out, you would realize that this is all like a distraction from your life and your ability to do the things you want to do in your circle. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a distraction, and I think it's, at some point, it's unhealthy. And whenever you're getting emotional or stressed about it, it's probably time to take a step back from arguing with people or trying to convince people of what you think, because, what we think as individuals, we all think we're right, and the core guys are like, and they're calling people Nazis. Like KNOTZ. I saw that. I was like, come on. And like the Knots guys are like, core is the end of Bitcoin. And I'm like, come on. Like, yeah, and I'll admit, I don't understand it well enough. Like, I've taken some deep dives. I've tried to understand this computer science and coding. But I think it's like, it would be way better if there was collaboration and like an open forum of discussion, and people got away from you can become a keyboard warrior really easily and type whatever you want behind, the screen. It's very easy. But I feel like, yes, it's decentralized, but get all the stakeholders who are, get them all in a room, get everybody in a room, like all the most important people who are coding and doing all the great work, and like, have a moderator, and instead of a yelling match, be like, guys, we all want the same thing. We want the world to be a better place. Let's talk about it. Let's try and understand each other's points of view, and let's steelman each other's, discussions about why this is, because there are brilliant people on both sides. So I kind of digressed into focusing on that because it's like a big part of what's going on right now. But I do think that it is a bit of a distraction, and so many of us who don't understand it at the deepest levels that these guys do, these computer engineers do, we're just throwing gasoline on the fire, and but people will disagree and say, no, we have to fight for this. So I think that fracture, that that discontinuity of like the social discourse and communal thinking and synergy is, that's what led to the fork wars and the block size wars and the fork in the past, and Bitcoin survives, and it'll carry on. So,
and there's a lot of interesting things in there. First of all, you talked about like them coming together in a room. It's actually happening in October.
Great.
It was kind of a thing that I want to bring up to, but in a different context, because I know already kind of all the arguments. I've listened to all the actors, and for me, it's just like very clear. Bitcoin will not die from this.
Yeah, right.
And people are concerned. Like I got those messages of like, "Hey, Robin, I'm new to Bitcoin. Everyone is freaking out about knots and core. Should I be concerned?" And I think if you get a message from one person, there are at least like 10 people concerned about the same thing, that don't ask the question, but like still have the question in their mind. And I think this can actually, like, this emotional debating and calling each other names and being so emotional driven, I don't think does anything for anyone. And I'm now super looking forward to I brought it up here just so people can also see what I mean, to this panel. It's like I saw that. I'm a speaker also there, and I saw that, I think, when was it? Literally yesterday on Twitter, and I saw James and Lob, okay, Peter Dodd, so both on the core side, then Luke Dasher and Bitcoin Mechanic on the not side, and Stephen Livera, a very long Bitcoin podcaster, a very great guy as a moderator, and I'm personally looking forward to that panel, not because I want to learn about the topic, just I only look forward to that panel because I want to know if it is a hating panel, if they are like using the opportunity to hate each other in person, or if they try to close some bridges and like put some perspective on there. I think I will be disappointed, but let's see what's going to happen there.
Yeah, if they actually have a responsibility to find common ground, because otherwise, it's just like a fiat kind of game. It's like a distraction. It's like a Republican Democrat, or right versus left, or liberal conservative. It's a disservice to not work together to find a solution that's most beneficial for everyone, to air concerns and voice concerns and to listen to each other. And I think when you're face to face, I think it's much harder to yell and shout into the keyboard. And I'm optimistic. I bet these are all very, very smart people. Okay. And I think we're in very good hands. And I think that we owe these people a lot because, Bitcoin needs to change. We know we have quantum on the horizon. There needs to be changes to, there needs to be, AI is going to be like crazy. There needs to be all sorts of changes, and the fundamental questions like can be figured out in a decentralized consensus way by mature adults. And even though, we're emotional about this and people are emotional about it, I think it's a disservice if the people who are, quietly, running the show a little bit or helping to guide direction, it's a disservice to everyone if they're, so you don't wash your dirty clothes in public. And so I think that it would be a real mark of like maturity and intellectual integrity and compassion if they can get together and speak like adults and really make some headway and say, look, I understand this is, the way you're approaching it. Is there anything we can do? Because these are our concerns. And what are the real risks, and have that kind of a conversation. I think that will be wonderful. And I hope that's going to happen. If it does turn into a yelling match, I agree with you. I still think Bitcoin's going to be okay, but ultimately, it doesn't help. It doesn't help the cause. And if anything, it's going to be something that's off-putting to the new Bitcoiners who ask you, "Hey, do I need to be concerned about this?" Or the sovereign wealth funds, or the ETFs, or the nation states. If they start seeing, well, actually, there's this like infighting and there's this war inside of Bitcoin, that's a real problem. Like, oh, let's just wait until that's settled, or or like, do you think it's like an added risk? And as Bitcoiners, we need the most frictionless. We need, like, this is better. This is 10 times better than what we have in society. Nothing's up in the air. We're moving forward together by consensus in a decentralized way. And so, I'm hopeful that that they can come together, because I think both sides feel that there's risk, but there's obviously a solution. There's obviously a good solution here. I don't know what it is, but I think these guys will figure it out, and Bitcoin will.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use simplemining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need.
Will do well.
There is also Ratoshi, who was on my podcast, brought that amazing point up that block size debate was very fundamental to Bitcoin. How big the block size is really can impact the decentralization of Bitcoin.
Yeah, the number of nodes, exactly.
And the up return compared to block size is a very small issue. It's not on the consensus level, it's on the policy level, which makes this whole thing. So, for the few people that might not understand that, consensus is something like everyone has to agree on, and policy is just like you can run two different nodes and they are still producing the same blocks. In a very simplified way, if someone knows Bitcoin blockchain very well, probably like wants to cut my throat open now. And the point he was trying to make is, 2017, the discussions and the debates were about something very fundamental. And now the discussion debates are way more high level. Like all the consensus, all the like fundamental stuff is kind of already like fixed in stone. We're no longer having a debate if we are increasing the block size or increasing the total amount of Bitcoin or anything like very fundamental to Bitcoin. We're now having like a policy thing that even some not people that I had on my podcast say like, it doesn't matter. I literally had people that were on the NOTs camp running NOTs since way before op return actually came on the scene, and they're like, I don't know why everyone is talking about it because it just doesn't matter. And I'm like, I'm not the best expert in that, but if someone that is really an expert in the technical sphere and has been running NOTs is telling me this specific issue is not the important thing, he is pissed off core because way before things happened. This tells me it is not something, because it is not something that Bitcoin will end Bitcoin. And this is probably also a point where we can see the maturity already of Bitcoin, that we are talking about small details rather than like fundamental stuff.
And people are, there's some words out there, and it might be helpful for people to understand, a lot of the conversation now is about ossification. And what that means, ossify, is like to make something mineralized like a bone. Like, and that makes it strong and hard, and it makes it, more resilient, moving forward. And I think Jeff Booth put it really great. We're building the infrastructure. Bitcoin now is like the internet in the 1970s or 80s or something, where it wasn't even like adopted. It was just like the frameworks were being built. And now we're thinking about how do we ossify this and make it stronger? And like you said, the policy level, that's a lot different than consensus. And, the main question, obviously, with all of this is, do we want to carry more information on, in Bitcoin, on the blocks than just financial information? And that's why people started worrying about spam and things like that with core updates. And knots versus core, right now, knots, like 21% of nodes are running knots. And a lot of people are saying, well, all you have to do is either run knots or don't even update, when the core update comes. And ironically, it's like today, isn't it? It's like, I think,
it's either today or like very soon.
I think it's today. Actually, this is great. We're talking about this. I think V30 comes out today. But, I think that it's worth understanding. Again, most Bitcoiners, most people who buy Bitcoin, like 99% of the world who buys the ETF or gets into Bitcoin, they have no clue what we're talking about. And this is already like a Bitcoin vernacular. It's like word salad. It's like, what's op return? What is all this crap? What's, and the bottom line, for the people who don't really know out there, is the big argument right now on the policy level is like, do we want to be able to add more information? But it's funny because you think about the Genesis block, and it had like that newspaper article, like it had like the Financial Times, and it said, like the very first block was like the chancellor of so and so, these banks are collapsing. And so, when you think about it, Bitcoin has always been a technology that transmits and memorializes some form of information on a distributed ledger. And so now the question is, well, how much of that information do we want to have on the ledger? And there's so many, interesting questions about that. And the thing is, nobody really has a crystal ball. And so the real questions that we're asking, when you think about it, this is a very natural evolution this is something that like we should all be like, yeah, this is a good question that we should be asking. And it's not something we should be fighting about. It's more of like, a systems engineering question. It's like, how can we further optimize? How can we build more and more value into the network without compromising the network or, creating a problem that we don't want? And so, of course, the purists are like, well, no, we want to keep it as small as possible, as focused, as pure, and just this like really basic functionality. And then, of course, on the other side, it's, well, look, we need to evolve, and Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's still run by consensus. The block, we've got all that figured out. Now we want to know how we can create even more value here. And so it's a very interesting question. And I'm glad you brought up that conference. I can't wait to see these guys on the stage together. And if they're adults and if they're good stewards for Bitcoin, then they're going to be able to talk and reason and and rationalize their positions and, bury the hatchet, so to speak, and come up with some ideas and understanding of each other's thoughts and position.
I hope Stephen asked each party of like what they think is great about the other one. Like I always love that exercise of like hey, what do you? And the end routine question today is also interesting. It goes in that direction actually. That he asked in that direction to kind of set the floor to be more loving, to be more kind, and not like, oh yeah, like, please, core guy, tell me why Knots is horrible. Like,
yeah, well, and like actually,
the questions are a big factor.
On the exact opposite side of that, because I agree with that. That's a fantastic question. What is so great about this other approach that you think is useful? But the other question that's just as important is, what do you think is really a big risk about your approach? And what is potential downside of the way you're approaching it? And I think to have that kind of 360-degree evaluation, in medicine, as an ER doctor, we're dealing with probabilistic outcomes. And I have a feeling this is similar, because if it was an easy answer, there wouldn't be a debate. There wouldn't be a problem. Part of the problem is we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know like the ramifications fully of how this is going to play out. And then, the question is, can we reel it back in and just change in the future? And if it's an easy, oh yeah, if we screw this up, we can actually reverse this on a policy level. Well, then like, what's the risk? It's really not as big of a deal. And that's kind of the limit of my understanding. Like I actually don't know the answer to that. So I'll be interested to learn that. And I just need to do more research personally, because I do enjoy all this stuff intellectually. But it's going to be very interesting to see what they think. And this is not going to be the first or the last. These policy issues are going to be around for decades, if not longer. And because of that, as technology changes, we need a really good system for debate and figuring out problems. And as I started to say in medicine, all the outcomes are probabilistic. So when we're talking to a patient or even another physician and we don't see eye to eye on a treatment necessarily, we go through the same exercise, and we're trained to be extremely open-minded because we don't know, we're not clairvoyant. So prospectively, a lot of it comes down to, obviously the patient choice. If it's like a coin flip on if this treatment's going to help you live longer, live a better life, or help change your disease, a lot of times the best thing we can do is talk about the risks, talk about the benefits, and then decide. Bitcoin's a little tougher because it's not like a single patient who makes a single decision about themselves in a centralized way. It's more of like, right now, two sides pushing against each other, and there's probably other solutions. If we're being honest. And so the solution is going to come from a decentralized voting mechanism,
Yeah, this is 100%. And it's actually as an interesting point also where maybe more implementations of Bitcoin is actually better, where if there's two completely separate implementation, which is not completely separate because it's a fork of core. But if there would be two completely different implementations, if one has a mistake, we have the other one going. So there's like an argument to be made that maybe it's good to have more than just one implementation for decentralizing that aspect of Bitcoin too.
Wow, I never even thought about it like that, but that's actually a really good point. And honestly, there's more than two because there's old versions. So there's like non-updated cores. So I guess that would be still the same, but that yeah, it's very interesting because like that question almost leads you down a natural rabbit hole of, well, someday, maybe with AI, maybe there's like a multitude of different node options, and maybe you can maybe it's customizable, within a certain framework of big consensus and what you can and can't do, because obviously there are ways to make it bad. I think there are certainly decisions that bad actors could use but that's the beautiful thing about the incentive structure of Bitcoin. Bitcoin at its core is number go up technology, and it's an off ramp from fiat and from all the problems with the devaluation of our money and cutthroat PvP mechanics of scarcity mentality. And as long as Bitcoin, as long as the incentive structure is there, which it is, that's like the most fundamental thing, then people should just want to make it better, obviously. So I believe that everybody wants to make it better. I believe both sides envision a better, stronger Bitcoin because of what they're promulgating.
It's super interesting, yeah. And there is even Ratoshi again brought that up. He's brilliant also on that topic, because there is Lib Bitcoin also. I think Lib Bitcoin it's called. It's like a third implementation, and then there is BTCD or something like that. And BTCD is the first one that is not written in the same language, C++. So it's like the first one that's actually written in a different programming language, and this is where like true decentralization would actually come in, where if we have a whole different implementation that is not dependent on the programming language, because it's a very low probability, but potentially the programming language could be like an error case, and so. But now it gets very technical.
Well, I'm calling it now. The real battle is going to come with the quantum wars. I think that in a decade or two, the real interesting thing that's going to happen is Bitcoin is going to be pretty widely accepted. We're going to actually have to face quantum, and we're actually going to have to fork. And there's going to be a huge war about that. I think it's going to get very fascinating. This is maybe this is like infighting in the family, but I don't think it serves anyone unless they get together and take the gloves off and hug it out. There needs to be some kumbaya. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Either way, I think that everybody has such high expectations for Bitcoin, and most people listening who haven't dozed off or, fallen asleep yet, we want Bitcoin to succeed, and we want Bitcoin to go up in purchasing power and value, and we want everybody to understand its potential, because the quicker everyone does, the better the world becomes, and the more easier it is to focus on your passions. I think money is a distraction from life, just to kind of bring it full circle, and I think that all these questions, we're all so passionate about all these things because we want a better future. I really believe people are good in their hearts, and, for the most part. I think that everybody does what they do because they see a brighter tomorrow. And we just want everyone to understand and adopt Bitcoin as quickly as possible, so that we can get there as quickly as possible. So we can all enjoy our lives more and increase net joy through the world.
By the way, it's confirmed Bitcoin V30, Bitcoin Core V30 is released.
Wow.
And I just saw on Twitter, there's like, it's so funny how the internet goes. There's like Twitter spaces now, and it's called Bitcoin's funeral. V30 is released, like all of this fun thing. So, yeah, will be fun. I actually have a live stream in like 2 hours, something like that. It will be fun if the comments are flooded, because I did not make Bitcoin Core versus not a topic.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that's like, I'm not the best person to speak on that. So I didn't even make it a topic. And so, it will be fun if the comments are flooded with like, like talk about core.
Oh yeah, it'll be really interesting. I think it's fascinating, and I think history books will be written about this. Like the books there'll be a chapter on NOS versus core, and there'll be a chapter on, it's just such a fascinating time to be alive. And then the wild card, which we haven't even talked about at all, is AI. And then we might have touched on this last time, but the last chapter in my book is the death of money, because I think, and this is way out there, and people like get real worked up about this. But I think that ultimately all of this is such a distraction, because I really think that we don't need money. I really think that the ultimate goal of, technology should be such abundance that money doesn't even make sense, because you can have anything you want, basically. And people will say, well, coastal real estate, and there's always and Mona Lisa, there's always going to be things, but like, think about it. We can make diamonds. We can make diamonds now, in the lab. We can make infinite diamonds, and the cost of making a diamond is going to zero. And so like there's all these games, there's like fiat games to make diamonds expensive, but really, what is a diamond worth now? Like, it's going to be worth $0. And so like everything should go to zero, because of technology and AI, and like we have unlimited resources. We have unlimited power with the sun. We have, so, and we can always go to other planets. There's all sorts of interesting things that can happen, but I do think that ultimately, if Bitcoin is successful, it will basically approach infinite value. And then there's this potential, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a non-zero potential, a non-zero chance of a Star Trek-like utopian future where we just don't need to care about money and spend all of our time talking about money and value, and you get this and I get this. It boils down to a question of you get this and I get this, and what are you worth? What am I worth? What is my time worth? What is your time worth? What is this bike worth? What is this piece of gold worth? What is this book worth? It's like all those questions. When you imagine if we could remove all of this. And so I get to do that once a year by going to Burning Man. And Burning Man is totally decommodified. I recommend everybody go to Burning Man. I've been 11 times, and it is like, it's a mind-blowing experience. And yeah, you could think that it's drugs and sex and rock and roll and art and all this crazy stuff, but no matter what you think of it, it's so mind-bending, and it totally removes money, and it all comes down to just gifting things, services, products to each other, and it's fascinating. So I think someday all of this, I just went like kind of crazy out there, but I think it would be fascinating if someday the ultimate goal of money or of Bitcoin is to become totally worthless. That might be its ultimate success.
Yeah, we've talked about that last time a little bit, and it's such an interesting topic. Like it really is like thought provoking. And I think I wrote to you on Twitter, like the last episode made me think, and this was the major thing that made me think of like, oh yeah, like money might die, like the possibility of that. And there are many like arguments for and against that, but just the possibility, just that like I could imagine a world like that. It's crazy. I have this weird sense that like people really want a ranking system, some sort of like, oh, like, see, I have more than, I don't know, like there's like this, even, people go out of their way to buy something expensive to show off a symbol, to show off something, just because it like proves a point that you can afford this weird thing, which is obviously in Bitcoin less so, but even in the Bitcoin community, it kind of is. So I'm kind of curious on like how this human behavior of like ranking system and status symbols like might develop.
Yeah. And I mean, I write about that a lot in the book. I think it's all derivative to a couple 100,000 years of evolution where we want to become the most desirable mate. You know, you to be evolutionarily successful, all that means is reproducing, period. Genghis Khan, very evolutionarily successful, you know, and the crazy thing is when technology like goes vertical, like, when it goes totally, exponential, those sorts of things change because you don't all of a sudden need to be the strongest with a club and kill people to become the most desirable mate. So money kind of replaced raw physical power, and resources replaced raw physical power as like a desirable characteristic in a mate. And I'm not speaking just for male, but for females as well. You know, it's all about, can I provide? How much can I provide? Or can they provide? How much can they provide? And technology changes all that. If nobody has to worry about being provided for, it just changes the underlying social fabric and our understanding of everything. And so I think that like status symbols, buying things, having more money, it's all derivative to the way we've evolved as a human species. And all of a sudden now we've had this incredible, crazy, transformative, stimulus, evolutionary stimulus. And evolution is just adaptation to change, right? Well, now we've had this nuclear bomb of change go off in the last 100, 200 years, which is technology. It's not, and, so at the very most basic, level, it's going to take us a long time to evolve and adapt to this change. It's not going to happen inside our generationally. It's going to happen over eons. And the thing is, we are still, as like the human species, like in our infancy. And so, I envision a post-money world being one where the incentives are for self-actualization, for happiness, where incentives change from resource-oriented mate desirability, based on what you have or or what you flaunt or how much strength you have or whatever it is or how hot you are, like those things I think will fall to the side as technology and abundance make it clear that those don't give an advantage to anybody. When everybody in the world has as much money and resources as they need, then, there's always going to be physical beauty. And I think we're hardwired for that. And there's always going to be physical strength on some level. And there's going to be some of these things on some level. But abundance is going to totally take away the measuring, the need for dick measuring contests. Like we're no longer going to need to see, I mean, everything that we do, the Olympics, measuring billionaires, who's got the most money, who's number one, measuring our net worth in dollars. All of that, I think, can go away. It's fascinating. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that, if we really put all of our resources towards making our lives better, I mean, think about it. Cancer would already be solved. We'd probably already be living to 500 years of age, healthy. We'd probably have the moon and other planets. I mean, we're not living up to our full potential. We're living up to like nothing as a human organism, as like a societal organism. It's very interesting, but I think post money world is possible, and maybe it takes 100 years, maybe 500 years, maybe 20 years. I don't know with AI. Maybe it never happens. But I think that it's worth discussing, because I think that it could make a better world, because right now we're shooting each other, killing each other, war, genocide, mugging each other on the streets over money and resources.
Yeah, it's very true. It's a really interesting one.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. People.
It's like when you think about, I always love those videos that I kind of like for fun explaining human behaviors to aliens.
Yeah.
Because if you explain human behaviors to aliens, sometimes it really then all of a sudden does not make sense what we are doing. It's like, oh wait, you're bombing each other? Like, why are you doing that? Oh, okay. Like there is, so like the whole Fiat system does not make sense. Like, oh, you have that? Like, who do you owe it to? Oh yeah, like each other, like, oh, why are you doing that?
So
like why are you
that's very interesting. That presupposes an alien species that somehow, has a technological advanced or morally superior ethical position, and they didn't have to go through evolution. Because if they did have to go through evolution, then they would be like, I read about this in the history books, and you guys are like living in the dark ages. And my guess would be that if, unless you were like instantly created, that if you believe in evolution, and if you believe on all other alien planets, like species grew out of like atomic structure to molecular structure to whatever the alien slug is, to the alien, chimpanzee, to the alien, to the modern day alien, human analog, and then went through the technological evolution, they probably would have like been there and been like, look, you guys don't need to worry about this stuff. They probably would understand. It's an interesting question. It's almost like if you had to explain it to an AI or a robot that instantly came into being and had sentience or super intelligence. That's probably like the better question, because if you assume like a super intelligence, or you assume that that's coming, like the super intelligence is probably going to just be like, the first thing that it's going to think is like, okay, you guys are idiots. And like, really, like, you guys are morons. So, and here's how to do it better. And then the question is, will we listen or not, or just keep fighting?
And there's also this thing, maybe we have to go through the hurdle and through the mistakes of evolution to end up where we want to be. If we skip, if we take shortcuts, maybe we have to learn the hard lessons later on than supposed to be. Like, I mean, this is like very talk that I'm like, I have no clue about. But if I think just about like a kid growing up, if you protect it too much and let kind of the mistakes later on in life, it also has negative impacts. So like making the mistakes and like not taking shortcuts, but like making all the way for yourself. This is, I mean, this goes maybe in a completely different direction, but that's why I'm a very big fan of not taking in a small startup too much outside capital. Like I like growing things organically, especially if it's your first one, because you learn so many interesting lessons along the way that might get away if you have a small startup that's like a few tens of thousands of dollars, maybe a month, and you learn the lessons along the way, is probably a lot better than getting a venture capital company in there that puts a few millions in the bank, and you're like, oh yeah, like here's money for this problem, here's money for this problem, here's money for this problem. You didn't really learn anything. I don't know if this as a comparison makes sense, but I think we sometimes it's very important to go through the struggle, go through a hurdle yourself to learn. And maybe that's also evolutionary. It's good that we don't learn from aliens coming to us and saying like, oh, like, what are you doing there?
Well, and that's what our immune systems do. And honestly, that's why I'm happy that there's this, all these things are happening, the block wars, core and knots, and like these things are essential. You know, like this is actually good. It's good that Bitcoin is going through this. Just kind of bring it back to Bitcoin. But for us as a human species, it's important. For Bitcoin, it's important. It's all adaptation to change and how you deal with problems. And so I think it's necessary. I think for human beings, it's necessary. For Bitcoin, it's necessary. And I think the real problem, though, is, like you said, if an alien technology came and was given to us, or if VC capital goes into like a first startup with inexperienced founders, that's exactly what's happening with technology on a kind of like a macro time scale. Like for 200,000 years or whatever, since they found, Lucy's predecessors or the missing link or whatever, we've been around for hundreds of thousands of years as modern humans. For 99.99% of that time, incentive structures have been, just live. The average life expectancy was 30 years old. And like, it was live, find a mate, get it done, have kids, as many kids as you can, to be evolutionarily successful. Now all of a sudden humanity is faced with this incredible technological explosion. And now with AI, it's going to literally go completely vertical. And AI is a real wild card, and it's mind bending. And I think it might not be good for us. It could be incredibly good, but I don't think that humanity is ready for all of these amazing fast changes that technology brings, because like you said, we're more hardwired to experience these things in a slow way and struggles. If all the struggles are suddenly removed, there's going to be a lot of people without meaning, without, purpose, with no idea what to do. It's like the lottery syndrome. It's like winning the lottery versus working really hard and getting your millions or billions or whatever it is. And so we're right at that juncture. And I think the most important thing you can do is, because of that, and if you understand that, especially if you're a Bitcoiner, and you really understand what's going on and you've stacked and you've got a Bitcoin or two Bitcoin or whatever you have, your world is going to change in the next 10 to 15 years. You're going to have a lot of money, a lot of value. And so I think the starting to plant the seeds of, like this, of becoming self-Bitcoinized and like starting to focus on yourself and bringing it back to life enjoyment and growing, those things are going to be the really important things. And there's no better time to start than right now. Like, it's just as important to work on yourself as it is to stack Bitcoin. Because like we've talked about, you can be really unhappy and have a whole bunch of Bitcoin.
Fascinating talk. I almost don't want to stop it.
Yeah, no, you gotta, I'll join your stream later. I can't wait. We always have good talks.
Before I let you go, like, there's two questions always. There's the returning question, the returning guest question. I don't know how to call it. I have one question for each and every one of my guests that have returned on the podcast, like you have. Mm-hmm. And the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance?
That's a great question. Outside of Bitcoin, since my last appearance, I've learned to be even more radically self-reliant. I'm making changes in my life that are a little risky, like you when you hired out and kind of made those changes. I'm making some changes, and I'm branching out, and I'm really starting to do more. And it's very exciting, but it's also a little scary. But I think I was always, just as a doctor, just kind of go to work and see patients and come back home. And I've always been a little bit of an entrepreneur, but now I'm really diving into that a lot stronger. And so I've learned to become more radically self-reliant. And even though it's scary, I've learned that it's like worth it in every way. And so that's been a huge lesson for me.
I don't know if there's any science behind that, but every time I've been excited and scared at the same time, it turned out to be a great thing that I do.
Yeah, I don't know, but all I can say is I think that we worry much more than we need to. And I think there's a lot of like manifesting your dreams in this world. And the more timid you are, the more likely you are to bring problems into your life and create your own obstacles, maybe in your mind that manifest in reality. But I think that if you like force reality to happen the way you want it to, you actually can have a big impact on reality.
And we have an end routine in the podcast. I'm really looking forward to this question with you, and where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And to preface this question, like, don't name that person. Like, you should not, you don't have to name that person. But he asked, imagine the person that you most dislike in your life. What do you love about them?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, well, first, let me think about someone who I dislike the most, because that's a hard question, because I don't really, that's like a negative emotion, and I really try to not dislike people in the first place. But I'm trying to think of someone who I really dislike first so that I can answer this question.
It was kind of hard because I always try to answer those questions, to go through the motions. Yeah. And I was really thinking, because if I don't like a person, I tend to, this person tends to just like kind of get out of my life. Like, because if I dislike him, chances are that he dislikes me or she dislikes me. And then it's like, yeah, then it's just not, he's no longer in my brain. And I was really, it was really hard for me to find a person, because like we live in bubbles and we tend to live with people that we like.
Well, I guess what I would say is the people who I have friction with, whether it's on like the social media or in real life, the people who I have friction with, seem to me to be extremely close-minded and have like absolute conviction in their belief and ideals. And I would say that I really can see that as a strength also, and I respect and admire it, because I think certain people who have changed the world are very idealistic and maybe close-minded and have like extreme conviction, both for good and bad, but certainly for good. And I would say that I'm like extremely open-minded and agnostic, and I don't get worked up or angry or upset very often. And I see political views from both sides, and I can talk with both people. I just want everybody to get along, and I just want to like keep it logical and intellectual as a discussion. I don't like violence or anything like that. So I guess like if I had to choose like a person in my mind who's like this amorphous person who I've had friction with in the past, or who I, brought up negative emotions, the thing that I admire the most about them, or that I love the most about them, is their ability to be so convicted, so strong in their beliefs that it means everything to them. And I think those kind of people really change the world. Whereas people like me might just be more open-minded and kind of following along a little bit. I would love to think that I'm making an impact to some degree, but I don't have that level of conviction. And so I think it's beautiful when someone does, even if I hate them.
There's some value in being extremely convicted and obsessed with something, and almost like blindly in love with a project, and really trying hard to make it work, even though a bunch of people tell you you're an idiot, you're crazy, that nothing is going to happen. Like, this is actually like something admirable. And but there's also like some danger in there.
That's a perfect recap. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Thank you so much, Noah, for being on. It's been, as always, a really great chat. And I feel like with you, we should plan out like 2-3 hours of conversation and not just like 1.5 that I usually set out for like a conversation. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and buy your book?
Thanks. Yeah, my book's on Amazon. I really need to print the soft cover, but just search for self-Bitcoinization. I'm sure you'll find it. I'm on X, where I have, all sorts of views and intellectual thoughts, and that's Noah Kaufman, MD, NoahKaufman, MD. And then I'm the same on Instagram, which is where I more post about climbing and philosophy and poetry and love and art and science, all those things. I don't really do Facebook, but, I also have a website and people can always reach out to me. I love talking and learning, together with people. And I've met such interesting people, that way.
Awesome. Then yeah, thank you so much for being on, Noah. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.
This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.